Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the hearing to order. Acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Ojibwe, Cree, Dakota peoples, in the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Ron Merritt. I'll be your chairperson this morning. Introducing the panel members via Zoom is Faye Bronson. And also joining her is Mr. Nibdip Dangel. And representing the city of Winnipeg from the assessment department is Justin Mikulik. Our recording secretary this morning is Justwin Kumar. This morning we'll be hearing application of for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussions to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn in testimony, and anybody speaking in these matters must be sworn in. Please be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by City Council and is independent of it, along with the city administration. We make our decisions based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issue a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decision in respect to application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to application for exemption from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included in the board's order. In respect to the hearing this morning, I will confirm the matters or the points of appeal of your property be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have. And that'll be the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each party will have the opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about the application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket this morning. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board's order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and will be part of the public record. We will be hearing items 1 to 7 in the docket. So I'll ask our secretary to swear in the assessor, and we'll have the first applicant, which is Mr. Lyle Rack.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Justin Mikulik.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Rack, state your full name.
Lyle Rack.
Thank you. Do you affirm that the evidence you are about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr.
I
Rack.
just have a question. Morning.
Go ahead.
I just have a question. Can you see me? Can you see me on Zoom?
We can hear you on Zoom.
We can hear you, but not see
Can
you.
you see me?
No, we can't see you.
No, you're on telephone.
But you can't see me.
No, not yet. Try some other things.
Well, I'm on an iPad too. So I'll see if I can get in here.
We'll give you a few minutes, Mr. Rack.
Mr. Rack, if you dialed it, okay, I can see on the mark.
Okay, it says it's connecting right now.
Yeah, I can see you from another connection. No, I can't see you. Okay, now we can see you.
Okay, great. First time I've done this, so.
You're the only one,
Good.
you're the only one, Mr. Rack, that's presenting today. Mr. Rack, are you ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you know the standard routine. So we'll first hear from the assessor, and we're going to deal with 20 Valhalla Drive. Mr. Mikulik, the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, so we have file number 223747 and roll number 040019330000. The roll year 2023. The assessed value 7,494,000. Classification 20. Liability is taxable. So we have a 6-story apartment, 2 buildings. The effective year built, actual year built are the same, 1968. 71 suites and the 69 indoor parking stalls. If you scroll to page 2, you could see the location just on the northwest corner of Chief Peguis Trail. As we scroll down further to page 4, we have our income value summary for the property. So you could see where we're coming in on an average monthly rent per unit at $977.48. And then our workup from the model provided below with an effective gross income of $806,163. Expense ratio of 50.27% to get a net operating income of $400,905 and a cap rate of 5.35%. So as we get to page 5, you could see the rent comparables that I had provided from similar properties in the area. So you could see where the subject falls in line rent-wise with other surrounding properties. So next on page 6 and page 7, we have our capitalization rates. So the first table here, we're dealing with the multifamily zone. So the city of Winnipeg, we have a range on our cap rates between the 20th to 80th percentile, 4.8 to 5.6%. And scrolling further down to page 7, we have provided a sample of sales to back up the ranges of our cap rates that had income stabilizations done by Matt in our department to verify the cap rates of all the sales here. So you could see that they range from 3.6% to 5.74%. And as we scroll on to page 9, so I did an income and expense workup. Now, if you look on page 10, they have a pretty high property management and administration fee. It's $361,999. Now, I don't know if maybe that was an error or whatever, but I used the 5% standard. So I took their effective gross income, which you could see is $818,176. Applied the parameters of insurance management, their utilities because they were combined. Repair and maintenance, which was really high for the, it was coming in at over $3,000 a unit. Now, I standardized with $2,100 a unit, which is really still quite high on the high end, but also includes their maintenance and supplies and waste and snow removal, as they had stated that it was included in their figures. So after all that, we end up with a net operating income of 407,265. And the model that we're coming in at for this property is 409,005. So we feel pretty confident in terms of where we're at with the model. The expense ratio is almost bang on. And if you just scroll, which maybe could be a reason for the high repair and maintenance on page 13 onwards, they do have permits that they are doing repairs on the building. Like they did repair, did some balcony work, and they are repairing the parkade. So unless I can see an actual line item breakdown of the repair and maintenance, it's pretty hard to go with that figure. It's just like it's so high. So we standardized at the higher end of what we would typically see. And then I just supplied just some pictures of the property, page 18, 19, 20, just for reference. So that would conclude the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. McCulloch. Mr. Rack, questions of the assessor?
Just one question. Would you agree that perhaps that the high expenses were due to renovating suites to maximize rent?
Potentially, I mean, that could be one of the reasons. Unless I seen a breakdown of the line items, I mean, I would have to assume that. I guess that was the case.
No further questions.
Thank you. Ms. Branson?
I don't have any questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Danja?
At this point, I don't have any questions.
I just have a couple questions. Mr. McCulloch, I guess you did some extra work in order to support your NOI on, I'm not sure what page it is, but you're still, you've come up with an NOI of 407,265, and yet the model is 400,905. So are you just trying to prove the model's figure?
Yeah, so the workup was just to show that the model is actually still coming in lower than the income and expense workup that I had done.
But I guess...
So it would validate that the model's relatively accurate.
Mm-hmm. For the city's way of thinking, correct?
Yes.
And the whole presentation is model driven?
Yeah, like the income value summary that we have on page 4 would be what our assessment model produced for the property. And then, like, just touching on the previous question, the workup that I do is to validate that the model that we have is relatively close to what the income and expenses are for the property. Because it's mass appraisal, right? So there's going to be an estimation element of the model. So we would do the site-specific workup to see how close we are.
So just looking at, what you've submitted here in regards to cap rates.
Yeah.
What does this, is this also again to support the model?
Yeah, so the page 7 that we use for capitalization rate evidence, we provide these sales that have transacted during the reference period so that it can support the range of what our cap rates are.
But I see in the cap rate that you have here, they're fairly current sales, which is a plus.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything that would point to a cap rate that you're using of 5.25.
5.35.
35?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Can't read my writing. Okay.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So are you saying that there's no property that has an exact cap rate of 5.35%?
Mm-hmm. But also the fact that isn't Valhalla in North Kildonan? And I don't see anything close to North Kildonan.
Yeah, I would say that these sales, though, are taken from various points of the city and stabilized to give an estimation of where the cap rates can range relative to where our model is. So there's obviously going to be some variance from property to property because we're dealing with percentage points, but where the ranges of our model is on the 20th to 80th percentile, these sales support where that model's coming in at. So
just, these are just points that I bring out. The other fact is that the subject property is 71 units, and I don't see the only cap that is vaguely close is the first one that you have in McPhillips, which is 90 units. So all the rest of them are smaller units. So
I think it still gives a range of where smaller units ones are selling, larger units are selling. And again, it like we're doing these cap rates and posting that evidence there to validate what our model produced, because an assessment model, it's never going to be exact, right? Like you're never going to be exact when you're assessing thousands of properties. So we say, okay, here's where our model's coming in with the cap rate. Here's sales that we have found that were stabilized, showing that this supports the range of where the model's coming in from.
All right.
Because we're comparing mass appraisal to site specific. So we've now done the sales crunching of the numbers per se, the income stabilization on page 7 to show that, hey, when we do actually look at individual sales, it supports where the model value is coming in at.
All right, I thank you. Mr. Rack, we're ready for your presentation, sir.
Okay, if you want to just go to my brief, you can see a picture of the building on page 1. You can see that the building's gone up about 15%. Go to page 2, that's the city's workout, and basically increases in value are kind of limited to the allowable from the tenancies branch, which usually income grows about 2% per year. You did see that the assessor produced some permits. The owner's gone through his blocks that he's owned and gone through a rehabilitation scheme in which he puts a certain amount of money in to apartments when they're vacated, and then you can get a higher rent. So if you go to page 3, City Winnipeg Assessment Taxation, where it's showing the Swiss suite rental per year fully occupied, and basically I've included the parking for $808,340. If you go to the last page, I'm using the actual department's vacancy, expenses, and cap rate. Since there was so much work done to the building, I'm using their parameters and I'm applying the actual rent. So we got a gross rent of $808,340. I applied the vacancy, the expenses, and the cap rate, and I get a value of $7,273,000. The C increase is 15%. The actual increase is 11.5% based on the actuals. That's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you, Mr. Rack. Mr. Mikulik, excuse me. Questions of the applicant?
Yeah, just regarding the effective gross income that you used on their income and expense mailer, it shows their total income was $818,176. So why did you use the 808, 340 and then deduct for vacancy?
Because that's on that sheet states that that's how much the building generates at fully occupied.
Okay, because their actual mailer states that their 2020 income was 808, 340 plus 9836 for laundry, and then you got a total income of 818, 176.
I didn't include the laundry.
Oh, okay.
Because
So
the department
I was
doesn't-
just okay.
Well, the department, when they come up value it to be fair and equitable to all properties, the department doesn't even use parking, but I didn't include the parking.
Okay.
And really, the cap, and as I feel that if you cap the parking or the actual laundry, it's a ridiculous value on just machines sitting there. If you cap it, it means that laundry's worth $185,000, which is kind of ridiculous. I mean, you could buy 200, 300, 400 machines for that. So I didn't include the laundry, but I did include the parking. As you see, there is no parking on that side, the parking is included. So I capped the parking too, which I thought was reasonable.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have.
Thank you. Ms. Ransom?
So, Mr. Rack, you indicated that you didn't include the parking. Are these machines like coin operated or pay per use, or are they included in the suites complimentary?
I did include the parking in my valuation, but these are coin operated machines that are on the floors.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Tangel?
So was any renovations happening at the parking lot at all?
Say that again, please.
Was there any renovation that happened at the parking lot, the actual parking lot that we're assessing right now?
Yes, I still didn't kind of hear you clearly, but the parking lot, the value of the parking lot is included in the for the evaluation, and the cap rate is applied to the parking lot also.
Okay, I see your point. Okay.
Because at the bottom, you'll see that
I do see the cap rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rack, you're using the same cap rate as the city?
Yes, I decided I didn't have any sales to actually go against that cap rate. I thought with the apartment being renovated, I thought it was okay at this point in time. Instead of going for the cap rate, I decided it was more, as far as valuation goes, is to use the actual rents from the apartment block instead of adjusting the cap rate.
And I'm not sure what the page is, but you say here that the city increase is 15%, and then you got actual increase is 11.5. So is that based on
correct.
What you have determined?
That's correct. If you looked at page 1, it shows what the property was assessed at for 2022, or in other words, a 2020 reassessment. And then what it's increased by. So the city says that it's increased by 15%. So based on my valuation, the actual increase by using actual numbers from the property, it's gone up 11.5%.
Where did you, Mr. Rack, where did you get these figures from? Is that something published that the city's apartment buildings have gone up 15%, or is this a site specific?
Well, if you go to page 1 of my brief, that 15% comes from the city. first page of my brief there shows what it was in 2022 and what the property is in 2023, and it says the percent change is 15.
All right. I thank you, Mr. Reck. Either party want summation?
No, I'm
No.
okay.
Mr. Reck?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. All right, then we'll go to the next property, Mr. Reck. Justin, we're at 1060 Brazier Street, so the floor is yours.
Okay. So we have file number 223750, roll number 0203-161-1500. Roll year 2023, assessed value $2,985,000. Classification is 20, liability is taxable. So you could see here it has one building, 2 stories, actual year built 1962, effective year built 1972, 23 suites, 23 outdoor parking. And then the location here on page 2, you can see where it's located on Brazier. So it's just south of McLeod and east off of Henderson Highway. And to page 4, so I have our income value summary. So you can see we got 21 bedrooms, 3 2-bedrooms. Our average monthly rent is $991.27 per unit. And then our model work up here with our effective gross income coming in at $264,836, expense rate 43.64 for a net operating income of $149,262 and a 5% capitalization rate. Page 5, just some rent comparables here to show where the property falls in line with similar properties in the area. Page 6 and 7, again, talking about the capitalization rates that I had touched on previously, same sales. So we can scroll past that, getting to page 9, just again, so I did an income and expense workup. So using their actual reported total income under the effective gross income here, adding in the insurance, the management fee of 5%, again, it was really high at $117,170. So we use the standard 5% like we do for all properties. Utilities, you could see there, they were combined water, heat, and HVAC. Repair and maintenance, we even stabilized a little bit higher. We use $1,200 a unit, and that also includes the maintenance, supplies, waste, snow removal in that figure. Now, property was renovated 2017, so the repair and maintenance is a little bit lower. And then I just produced here the other line items, caretaker, property tax, to get a net operating income of $154,918. And our model coming in at $149,262, so below actual. And so yeah, if you want to scroll here to page 13, you could just see the permit that was taken out for interior and exterior alterations. So that would explain the effective year built that was added onto the property. And then just further explanation of this was what was done with the electrical on page 14, just some reference, and then some pictures here as we scroll on just to see, give you an idea of the work that was done and what it looks like inside. So outside of that, that would conclude the presentation.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rack, questions?
So you would agree that the amount of money that was spent was to renovate the suites so that the owner could maximize rents?
Yes.
That's my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Brenson?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Dengel?
Just one question in reference to the renovations that were happening. It looks like the boiler system was replaced too as well.
Yeah, it looks to be like there was a upgrade there done.
So that's the only question I have.
Thank you. Mr. McCulloch, the expenses for this particular building seem to be pretty low at 43.6.
Like, are you sorry? Are you talking about our model expenses or?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
So how do you feel about expense ratio at that level?
I think we give a pretty accurate picture of the property. It might be a little bit higher, which would probably give the benefit of the doubt to the property owner in this case. I mean, if you really wanted to maybe dive deep into it, you could make a case for an increase, I guess, if you really wanted to, but I don't really think that's necessary.
And I guess because of COVID, you haven't visited this property at all?
No, but I had applied pictures that were taken for someone in our department who inspected the property.
And the 5% cap rate, model driven?
Yeah, it's a model driven cap rate. And then again, we reference that with the sales on page 7 that it falls in range that our model supported.
A little unusual for it to come to a 5%.0.
Possibly. I mean, it's model driven, so I don't really have, that's just the way it worked out.
Thank you. Mr. Rack, we're ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the assessor shown that back in 2016, the building was, a lot of money was put in to renovate the building underneath the rehabilitation scheme, in which you invest a certain amount of money into each suite, and it removes you from the rentals and increases where you can maximize your rent for a number of years without being constrained by those 2% increases. So that's what the owner did. So the rents he's getting now are what he could achieve at market. So if you look at page 1, there's pictures of the building. Page 2 basically shows how the city basically valued the building with a 15% increase. Page 3 shows what the building would generate in revenue if it was fully occupied plus parking. So that comes out to $254,102. And again, for valuation, I'm using the actual rent plus the parking. And then I'm applying the department's parameters for vacancy, expenses, and the cap rate. And so I'm getting basically $2,773,000. So the city increase is about $392,000, and I'm suggesting that the actual increase was $180,000 to come up to $2,773,000. That's my presentation. Thank you.
I thank you, sir. Mr. McCulloch, questions?
No, just again, similar to the previous property, their total income reported, their effective gross income reported was $257,493. So that would be after vacancy, correct?
I don't know if there's any vacancy. It doesn't show that there's any vacancy that year. That would be fully occupied, I'm guessing, because it's
Okay.
254, and that's what the as indicated as if what the apartment would pull in is fully occupied. I included the parking in that value, but not the 3,000 for the laundry, as I've stated before in the other hearing.
And just how come you didn't provide any rental comparables?
I'm using the actuals from the apartment.
Okay, no further questions.
Yeah, I mean, a prudent purchaser is only going to purchase the property on the income stream and what the apartment's generating. And as you've shown, a lot of money was put into the apartment and new kitchens, etc. So I think the rents were maximized. The whole idea of renovating the block was to get out of the rentals agreement at 2% or 1.9% per year to maximize rent. So he has basically gotten the best rents he can out of the renovated units.
Okay, no more questions.
Thank you. Ms. Branson?
So again, the only place we're differing, Mr. Rack, from the city's assessment is at potential income? You don't?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's based on the rents that you say were provided to you, which appear to be different than those that were provided to the city on the mailer.
Well, the mailer rents are the same. Basically, the gross income residential suites is $254,102, and that includes the parking. Because if you see on page 3 of my brief, the owner has the parking in there. As you see, page 3 at the bottom, the total gross income is $254,102, which is the suites and the parking's included, which is $86.40 to come to $251,102. And that number on the mailer at the top, residential suites gross, is $254,102. So that includes the parking. Because there is parking in that column, but he has nothing in there because it's included in the rent. He's taken that figure from my page 3 and put it in as residential suites total, including parking. You should have broke it off and just put the rent up there and put the parking down below on the income on the mailer, but it's the same value.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
I thank you. Mr. Gengel?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Mr. Rack, I guess you had the owner's financial statements?
Yes, I have gone over, I did go over a lot of the information just to verify it.
So I see for the NOI, you were about $10,000 lower.
They are?
And yet your expenses percentage-wise are the same cap rate. So, when you're analyzing everything, where is the discrepancy?
Well, on the mailer that's on assessor's brief, I mean, there's $117,170 for property management. I talked to the fellow who actually fills it out, and they're filling this out as if they're using it for income tax purposes. I mean, he just did this for this one or two go rounds. I don't know why he did that, but I have talked to him and said you can't really do that, and the management should only be 5%. The expenses for this year 2020 are low due to the fact that so much money was spent in previous years on the apartment. I mean, I could have gone and taken all the fridges and the stoves and all the work they did and amortize it over its lifetime to come up with a value. But for this instance, as I just used the city parameters and the actual rent that they would achieve if it was fully occupied at the new rents, which is my page 3.
I see in your presentation here, it's got I would assume that this is your form here in regards to any of your clients. And it's got change comparison 15%. So do you have any statistics around for how much apartment buildings have gone up? Is this your work, by the way, or is this part of the city's?
Are you looking at page 2?
You know something, I think it is page 2.
Well, that where it says the increase at 15%.
Yes. So is
That is from the City of Winnipeg web.
okay? So do you have any?
That's the city. Sorry.
So do you have any statistics? They're saying that apartment buildings have gone up 15%. Do you have any stats that prove otherwise?
No, I don't. Those kind of statistics, I don't know where they'd be published.
Okay.
But I'm just looking at the building as site specific, and obviously that percentage, 15%, comes from the model. So wherever the model gets that, who knows?
Okay. Either party wants submission?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rack?
No, I'm okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So we'll go to item number 375, Senewick Bay. So Mr. Michalak, whenever you're ready.
Sorry, I was muted. I'll start over again. We have file number 223754 and roll number 075-690-30700. Roll year 2023, assessed value 8,001,000. The classification of this is 40S, so they are school tax exempt. Actual year build was 2017. It's one building, 3 stories, 48 suites, 72 outdoor parking, located just north of
We have
road.
non-competition request for this one. It is in non-compliance for this one.
Oh, I thought it was the next one.
Yeah, so I was just getting to that where we have the non-compliance here for 54 3.2.
All right. We'll have to deal with that then. Okay. So the city is seeking non-compliance, correct, Mr. Michalak?
Yeah, because the information on, as you see on page 11, it was combined with another financial role, which is not a similar like sister property.
All right. So you're seeking non-compliance. Mr. Rack, your defense?
Well, I don't see any registered letter here that if the department didn't allow this to be submitted. I mean, you can see there's a lot of information on there. My question would be like, why didn't the department then send a registered letter to the manager of this unit to request a breakdown? Like there was no follow-up. If they didn't like it, they could have had a follow-up, which they usually do, and they would supply a registered letter asking for clarification on that income and expense questionnaire. So I don't think this is allowable. They didn't do their due diligence in having another request to have that information deciphered or made more clear for them. I mean, obviously someone filled all this information out.
So Mr. Rack, what you're saying is that your client did not receive any letter?
Yeah, I mean, if the department was didn't like what was submitted, they could have sent a registered letter and asked for a clarification or asked to split the roll numbers up somehow. But they didn't
That's-
answer. They didn't
that's
ask
the normal
to fill out
procedure.
the expense mailer.
Mr. Rack, that's the normal procedure.
That is correct.
Mr. Michalak, do you have any proof in your evidence that the letter was sent out? And there's a series of letters. I think there's a couple letters that go out. Do you have anything
No,
in your presentation?
no, it's just in regards to 16.1 of the Municipal Assessment Act, 16.1C, any income and expense related to the use or operation of the property. When I got to this appeal, I wouldn't have had time to send out registered letters to.
So, Mr. Michalak, the normal procedure is that it should be included in the brief, should it not?
Honestly, I don't know.
Okay.
I'll just have to say I don't know because this is the first time I've gone through this.
We, as a panel, we're going to take about a 5-minute recess and discuss this, and we'll get back to all parties.
I mean, I'll just say for reference, I did do a full brief in case we ran into this issue. So if you guys wanted me to carry on with the full brief for the sake.
We want to resolve this issue first.
Okay.
Okay. So,
Can I make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
yes,
The issue of noncompliance is, it states right in the act, and I could get it and read it to you, but it states that noncompliance is when the owner does not fill out anything on a request. So here we have a request for the income and expense mailer, and the owner did fill it out. As you can see, all the information's there, and I know there's additional sheets that would have said what each unit received in rent and how much rent was received for each unit. So they did comply. As I said before, if the city didn't like what they were doing and thought that it should
Mr.
be
Rack, is
clarified,
Mr. Rack, is that in your brief? We only have the cities, we're first dealing with the city right now. So all I can do is look at the screen and say that there is no evidence in regards to the letters, but we haven't gotten to your evidence yet. So we'll get there. So we're still going to take about a 5 or 10 minute brief, as long as it takes us to resolve this.
Okay.
thank you.
Great. So we'll get back. We're going to take a brief pause.
Okay.
Okay. We'll call the hearing back to order. After our thoughts with the panel members, etc., in regards to the non-compliance, it will not be, it'll be denied and not granted. So, Mr. Michalak, your presentation, as you can probably continue. Mr. Michalak? Okay. All right. We'll wait for Mr. Michalak to appear. So is Mr. Rack listening?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So the non-compliance is not granted. So we're just waiting for the assessor to come back and finish his presentation. Then it'll be your turn, Mr. Rack.
Okay.
So you don't have to give us all the data for the non-compliance.
Thank you.
Anybody need a break?
I'm okay.
Okay.
I'm good too.
Faye, coffee?
I got my coffee, but I can take a break if you'd like. If now's a good time since we don't have Mr. Mikulik with us anyway.
Sure. Let's take 5.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. We'll call hearing back to order. Mr. Mikulik, the floor is yours and your presentation regards to number 75 Sedgwick Bay. Mr. Mikulik?
Hi. Do you see you just want me to continue on?
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so anyway, we touched on the location, page 2. Going to page 4 here, we have our income value summary. So it shows the workup with 25 one bedroom, 23 2 bedroom. Our average monthly rent per unit, $10.92. And then we have our model workup here, where we show the effective gross income, $608,987. The expense ratio, 44.16%, and a net operating income of $340,058, and a cap rate of 4.25%. We do have this property as below average income quality to reflect that they will, they're not your standard apartment, right? So we've reflected that in our assessment model valuation, which you could see would pull the expenses up for a building that would be a 2017 build. And we have an expense ratio of 44.16%, which is on the high end. And then I provided rent comparables here just to show you relative to similar properties in the area where it falls. And so because, again, that we do market rents for these because it's as value in exchange, not value in use. So when we go and compare CMHC market, I had produced some tables here at the bottom of page 5 and onto page 6, which show you based on Zone 5 St. James, and then using the year built tables, as you could see on page 7. So when you reference that, we come out to a average zone and year average of $1,267.48 per unit on page 6. And when you apply that against our model, where our model potential rents coming in at $629,119, so we're coming in at 86% of market. So we're 14% below CMHC market rents. And then again, the same information on capitalization rate provided. And then, yeah, just, and then so I had provided just their income and expense mailers for reference in case, you wanted to look at them. But from a market standpoint, we're below market on the rent. So we feel pretty confident where we're at with our valuation on this one. So that would conclude my presentation.
I thank you. Mr. Rack, questions?
Yes. So the subject property is a nonprofit assisted living residence, and I assume all your comparables are private for-profit apartments?
Yeah, that's because we do market comparisons for these properties. They're not valued by comparing nonprofits because it's so difficult to find sales. So when you're doing a comparison for these, we go to market.
You're saying it's difficult to find sales. You could have looked at rents from nonprofits, but you just chose to stay with private profit-generating apartments, correct?
All these properties are assessed on a market basis, so we would go to CMHC to compare market rents because that's how all of these are valued.
That's all my questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Ms. Branson?
No questions, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Tangel?
Just one question in reference to your comparison. Looking at the construction classes, can you clarify the difference between where it says I'm presuming it's door, wood, steel studded, and then you got comparison number 2 where it says reinforced concrete frame, and 3 says masonry bearing wall. And can you clarify all that a little bit for us?
Yeah, those are judgments that were made when the property was constructed as to where it would fall in line based on like the framing and the foundation and the overall build of the building. So they would put them into certain classes depending on the build plans that were given to them at the time.
So what that would change the whole price structure as far as the comparisons are concerned, would it not?
Maybe if you were valuing them on a cost basis, but because these properties are valued on income, you're just solely using like a property's income potential and then comparing it with other properties in terms of cap rate, net operating income, etc.
Understand. All right, that's the only question I had.
All right, thank you. Mr. Michaluk, the cap rate of 4.25, basically because of the age factor, this was built in 2017. So does that warrant the 4.25% cap rate?
Yeah, and I would also add that because we've already taken the steps to encapsulate lower rents and higher expenses, and thus a lower net operating income, it's going to naturally give you a lower cap rate because the risk that we're encapsulating is through the income and expenses.
So when you say it's a non-profit rents, how is, is that based on their income to get in there? Often.
So if you scroll to page 15, I had put an excerpt here where it says all units have received financial assistance from the government and are only available to those with low incomes.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rack, your presentation.
Yes, so taking a look at my presentation on page 1, you'll see a picture, artist rendition of the actual building, and you'll see at the bottom that it's part. Kiwanis Bay is a total complex with all assisted living units, nonprofit, and the middle one there, the lodge, actually has a dining hall in it. So it's part of this complex where people can actually go and eat. And if you turn to page 2, you'll see the assessor used the cap rate of 4.25%. Page 3, it just gives the information how the department develops their cap rates. They actually don't use actual sales. They apply the cap, they determine a cap rate by taking the rents that come from the model and they apply it to actual sales. So they really don't have an actual cap rate. But as you can see, the chart below that is that they also state that the method they use is supported by Colliers, CBRE, Cushman and Wakefield, who do extensive market studies for cap rates. And you'll see the applied cap rate of 4.25% is actually below the 20th percentile of the city, so it's extremely low. And Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman and Wakefield market reports do not support that low cap rate. So looking at cap rates for a low-rise apartment, that's a profit-generating private apartment, the range is between 5 and 6%. If we go to page 3, actually Cushman and Wakefield and CBRE do a lot of extensive work developing, marketing, and selling these kinds of properties throughout North America. So they are kind of experts in the field of senior housing, assisted living housing, and independent living. So you'll see there's a chart there that basically gives a description of the different kinds of properties. And this would be an independent living or assisted living apartment block. So they do develop cap rates for those kinds of housing. And so they work with them all the time. And you'll see here's two charts from Cushman and Wakefield. So you got seniors housing, Class A, which I think this is a Class A building, ranges from 6.25% to 7%. And CBRE, basically there's where it goes from 6.25 to 6.75%. So the average from the low to the high is 6.25 to 6.87. So as the assessor was talking about, these have lower rents and higher costs, and they provide additional amenities such as dining hall, hall rentals, shopping by bus, outings, and the cap rates should reflect those costs. So based on the cap rates above, a reasonable cap rate would be about 6%, which is within Colliers, CBRE, and Cushman & Wakefield reports. It gives an average from 5 to 6% for private apartments, and the low-end housing is at 6.25%. So the average 6.25 to 6.87, and I believe with this particular building, since it's brand new, the cap rate should be a touch lower. So we've got, since the expenses would be lower. So we do have the income expense questionnaires. So if you go to the last page, it's basically I'm using the city's, the department's rent, I'm using the department's vacancy and the expenses and adjusting the cap rate. I'm using a cap rate of 6% and all the other department's parameters. And that goes in line at the low end, very low end of what market reports are for these types of properties. So at 6% cap rate, I'm looking for a value of $5,667,000. And these types of buildings basically never sell. They would never sell. The only time they would ever sell is to another nonprofit agency to continue on. So I believe that at 6%, that would be at the high end of value if it was sold, because it doesn't actually generate enough income to actually meet that value. But for purposes of taxation and for assessment, a 6% cap rate with the department's rent, vacancy, and expenses, I think is reasonable. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Mikluck, questions?
You're on mute, Mr. Mikluck.
Just regarding the cap rate study and report from CBRE, is that a Canada-wide report?
No, as you see, it says right there, it's Q1 2021 for Winnipeg.
Okay, so would you not agree that to calculate those cap rates, they would have had to include all the actual income that they're receiving and not doing a market report like in terms of going to just base market rents of a for-profit apartment?
Can you repeat that, please?
Would you not agree that to achieve the cap rates that they do for the seniors housing that they would actually have to include all the income that is being reported and not doing a CMHC market of a for-profit. So because the cap rate would essentially be inflated because the net income would be higher.
Well, they don't look at CMHC reports. This is basically information regarding nonprofit housing only. Nonprofit housing is basically has higher expenses and lower rents, and that has to be reflected. Like, for example, if for some reason this block came up for sale, someone that wanted to turn into for-profit, they'd have to, first of all, increase the rents. How do you increase the rents? Well, the only way to do that is through a rehabilitation scheme. In other words, you'd have to spend about $10,000 to $15,000 per suite, whether it needed or not, to basically break the rules and to sidestep the rules from the rentals board. The whole, I could have included 20, 30 pages on how to do that, which I've researched extensively. So you're basically caught into the rents that are there. You can't kick people out for no reason. The only way you can get people to leave is if you're going to renovate. And even if the building, it's a brand new building, you're not going to go out and spend $15,000 per suite to get out of that regulation of rental increases by the rentals board. So it's got to sell for less. In fact, even at that value, you're not making money on the property. It's nonprofit agencies that are going to take it over.
But would you not agree that the best way to evaluate this type of property would just be to do look at CMHC market rent and expense ratios and then apply proper cap rates because of the sales data that you would have available to you?
No, I just explained that. These are not, a nonprofit building is not comparable to a for-profit building. CMHC is for-profit. So none of those values could be used. It's apples and oranges. It's not the same. And in fact, the research that I've done throughout North America is basically these buildings are actually valued in all other jurisdictions, especially in the States, on the actual net rents that they receive. Actuals. But there's no sense me putting that information here because we don't do it that way. But you have to have allowances and a higher cap rate for these types of properties. CMHC, you cannot compare private to an institutional property. So I disagree with you, no.
And do you have any sales at all that you can provide in your brief to support the 6%?
No, these properties never sell.
Okay.
This is, CBRE they're experts in this field and they've developed these cap rates. There was one unit that did sell in the city a few years back from the government, sold it to a private company, but I don't have information on that.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Faye?
So, Mr. Rack, the city's brief, I think it was on the last page, on page 15, indicated that that rent was supported by government subsidies. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So is that included in your NOI? Like with respect to when you indicate income, is that factored in the subsidies that you're getting from the government, or your client is getting from the government rather?
I'm using the city's numbers. I'm not using my numbers.
Okay.
The potential income comes from basically the city valuation. If you look at my page 1, you will see I'm using the exact numbers that the city's using. I'm using the potential income of 629,119, which is the city's. I'm using the same numbers the assessor's using for the potential income, the vacancy, and the expenses, and the net income, the net OI. The only thing I'm changing is the cap rate.
So why wouldn't I would arguably you'd be in a position to have more information in the city since you represent these the owner of this building. Are you saying that these are all accurate? There aren't the expenses at 44.16%, for instance, is accurate? Because I note in your brief you also include that there's higher costs with the dining hall rental, shopping by bus, and outings. So could you have reflected that in here, or you're effectively agreeing with all the numbers but for the cap rate?
That's correct. I'm just agreeing with all the numbers and just applying a cap rate. I could have gone either way on some of the apartments you'll see coming up. I have gone back and forth with two different valuations, but for this particular building, I'm using all the city numbers and just adjusting the cap rate.
Okay, no further questions for me.
Thank you. Mr. Gengel?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rack, I noticed on one of your pages, which I'm sorry, but they're not numbered or anything like that, but it states that there's 21 one-bedrooms and 30 two-bedrooms. So that gives you a total of 51 units. And I see that the city's information is 48. So who is correct? Either party can.
Question. Well, I would have to.
Yeah, so we'll just.
I'd have to go with the income expense mailer from the owner that there's 21 one-bedroom and 30 two-bedroom. I'd have to assume they know how many units they have.
Mm-hmm. So it's a slight discrepancy, but I'd like to iron that out. Justin?
Yeah, like I think for this, we based our valuation on the 48 units. I mean, if we were to do it at 51, it would probably come out higher because you would be adding more units and pulling up the rent. But so for this, we'll have to default to 48 units because I can't confirm right now which one would be exact at this moment.
Thank you. Mr. Rack, you can straighten that out with your client?
I'll definitely give him a call and ask him about that.
All right. So, Mr. Rack, you had stated that there has been no sales for these particular nonprofit units. There's never been any.
No. I only know of one for sure that was sold by the government, I believe it was provincial government, to a private individual that was downtown. I don't have any information on it. I just know it from an appraiser that worked on it.
So you feel like the 6% cap rate is justified for the subject?
Yes, I do, because even if you look at like the market reports from Colliers on page 2, CBRE and Cushman and Wakefield, I mean, they've got a low at 5% to a high of 6%. And based on the lower rents and higher expenses, I mean, I'm using 6%. When Cushman and Wakefield, when they're looking at senior housing, it's the bottom line is 6.25%. So using 6%, and I use 6 instead of 6.25 at the low end, it's because the building is so new. So for probably 10 years or so, it's going to have very low expenses because everything is brand new.
All right. Summation, either party?
No, thank you.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Let's press on to number 90. Chinook Bay. So, Mr. Mikulik, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we have file number 223755, roll number 075-691-34170. Roll year 2023, assessed value 10,128,000. Again, classification is 40 and liability is S, school tax exempt. Property was built in 2015. It is a one building, 4 stories, 53 suites, 14 parking. And then if we scroll on, you know what, I didn't include a location map in this one, but it is in that same complex of where 75 was. So if we look at the income value summary I have here, 35 one bedroom, 18 two bedroom, average monthly rent per unit $1,233.81. You can see that our effective gross income is $759,593. Expenses $319,029. Again, a higher expense ratio, 42% for a newer build, and then the cap rate 4.35%. So this property, again, we've attributed below average income quality to reflect the nature of the use of the property. And then I've provided market rent comparables. So you could see where it falls in line here with other similar properties. And then if we scroll on to page 5, similar type of table as the previous one to just see where our model comes in line with the CMHC market report. So you could see we're coming in, the model's coming in at 784,703, the yearly rent potential 786, 858. So we're coming in just almost at 100% of market rent on this property. So cap rates, again, we had discussed the cap rate evidence and the cap rates that we're using previously. So yeah, and then page 11, I just posted another excerpt from the website. So again, it says it consists of 53 living units, 35 one bedroom and 18 two bedroom units. The terrace will provide activities, meals, and housekeeping. So that is included in these numbers here where they have their estimated monthly rents posted. And then it just gives you a description here for you. So outside of that, that would explain why their expenses are running pretty high, because they are providing all those services for the property. That would conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Rack?
Yes, so your private apartments, they would come with full-size stoves, fridges, and plus a parking space for each unit, correct?
Yeah.
And I guess none of your comparables offer meals.
No, they don't. And that's because, like I said, at the city, we appraise all these properties based on a for-profit market. So we take our rents and we compare it to market. And then if we feel like we're in line with market, that's what we go with.
Would you agree that it's pretty hard and probably not comparable to use private profit apartments to specifically this individual unit apartment that has a dining hall and it supplies food in the rent. It's got suite cleaning in the rent. They take you out for outings. There's not enough parking stalls for each unit. Would you think that these types of buildings are not comparable to private profit apartments?
Again, like I touched on previously, we go towards the market for all of these appraisals to defend our value. So when we look at the CMHC data, our rents fall in line, and then we apply a below average income quality on the property, which would pull up the expenses a little bit higher, and then that would at least give the benefit of the doubt that, hey, we know that this property, doesn't operate exactly like a for-profit. So when we go look at the market data, though, we're still below market. So we feel pretty good about that. And these are all assessed the same. It's no different than Manitoba housing. It's no different than if we had a property of rent geared to income. We apply the below average income quality. We defend our gross potential rent by saying CMHC data is verified, and we're in line or below market.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Thank you. Ms. Branson?
I don't have any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Degel?
Just one question in reference to your comparison. I see the first comparison, the total unit of the comparison is 365 compared to the rest of them are pretty much in line. Is there a reason why you selected that specific unit as a comparison?
No, for sure. That's a fair point. I just wanted to still give a description of the average monthly rent per unit. So even though it has more, an apartment building isn't necessarily going to charge less or more, depending on how many total units they have. So the average monthly rent per unit could still be a good indicator.
And with that first comparison, I see that heat and rent says no.
Right. Yeah, so in that average monthly rent per unit that they pay, they wouldn't have heat included in that number. So you could potentially say that the ones that do include heat, the owner would bear more of the cost. So if you were to look at the income and expense of that property, you would probably see a lower utility number.
Okay, that's the only question I had.
Mr. Rack, your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't ask the question. I'm not going to ask the same questions that I asked the assessor about all the CMHC cap rates, etc. So I would have asked those, but since I asked them once, I'm not going to ask them again. So going to page 1, you'll see that subject property and that big hall section in the front there and all the windows on your right there, that's the dining hall. So they have an extensive dining hall, which anybody in the property in that complex can use. Actually, to your right there, there's a little building in the back that's actually joined to that facility also. So if we go down to page 3, I've gone through this already with the seniors housing, and actually the units here, none of them have full-size fridges. They have little bar fridges. None of them have stoves. And as I stated before, meals are included in the rent, apartment cleaning, shopping, and activities are supplied. So on page 3 there, as I stated before, you cannot use private or profit housing cap rates on properties as proven by the cap rates that have been developed at Cushman & Wakefield and CBRE. So keep going to page 4. You'll see that basically for the independent assisted living B, that's 7.5 to 8.5% for Cushman & Wakefield. CBRE is 7.5 to 8.25. So if you go to the next page, you'll see there's only 14 parking stalls for 53 suites. The parking is included in the rent, and there's no fridges or no stoves. So if this thing was to be sold, you definitely have to, I don't know where you put a parking lot, but you'd have to have a parking lot, which would probably cost you a few $100,000 to put a parking lot, but there is no room for a parking lot. So that's definitely detrimental to the complex because there's no parking. So I don't know who would actually rent those places if you used it as a private for-profit unit. If you keep going down to page 4, you'll see the income expense questionnaire with all the income and the expenses. And right underneath there, you'll see that there's an email, and that's an email from the administration department at that complex. And in that building itself, they have 33 employees. They have 2 management, 2 caretaking, 1 for activities, 3 housekeeping, 9 attendants, and 16 dietitians. So they have extreme costs because of everything they provide in this particular building. So it's not comparable to a private apartment. So if you go to page 5, I've adjusted the expenses and taken from the income expense questionnaire. So you're looking at basically the building loses money every year. So I don't know who would buy it, and basically it would only be purchased by another nonprofit. So the cap rate that are indicated by Cushman and Wakefield are definitely higher than what the city, what the assessor is using. So you have to adjust that cap rate for the conditions of the property and the expenses. So going down to valuation on the next page, page 7, the property would be considered an independent living. The units do not have full kitchens, as I stated before. There's extreme losses of $1.7 million. And both the cap rates run from 8.5 to 8.25 from the low to high end. So using the department's model and the cap rate of 8.25%, I'm getting a value of basically $5,243,000. So that's using the gross income from the department, the vacancy, and the expenses, and applying a high-end cap rate based on the fact that the expenses are so high for the property. Now, there is a large expense for actually a loss in food, but that is actually distributed over a couple more units, and I couldn't get the breakdown. They don't have the breakdown for that because they basically put everything into the property that when it comes to food to the building that actually has the dining hall, it still loses money. There's no money to be made on this particular unit. So you go to page 7. So basically, we're looking at value of $5,243,000 at an 8.25% cap rate. And if you go down, you'll see the same pictures that the assessment department is, the assessor supplied. You can see the village. That is actually the lodge building in the middle. All that's, as I said before, there's no kitchens. They're basically just kitchenettes. So based on the expenses of the property, the best way to value it, since the expenses are so high, is I use the city's numbers and applied at 8.25% cap rate. 2,000. That's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you. Mr. Mikulik, questions of Mr. Rack?
Yeah. So just on page 7 here, your valuation, do you think it's appropriate to apply an 8.25% cap rate when our model rates that you use are driven based on just for-profit market data? Like because I struggle to just blanket an 8.25 cap when our valuations are done based on market.
Well, your valuations are based on market on private for-profit buildings, which I don't think. All right, I don't think they're comparable to this building at all. I mean, none of your buildings would have food included. They would have a complete kitchen. They would have a full-size fridge, and basically none of your buildings would have 33 employees in the building. So it's impossible to compare this to private. I don't think. That's why the cap rates are developed by the other 2 companies, Cushman and Wakefield and CBREs, because they know these types of properties, and they know that basically even when they sell to another nonprofit, whoever buys them knows they're losing money. You have to be a nonprofit agency that's supported by donations to operate these properties. So comparing them to CMHC, to me, it's just ridiculous.
So would you agree then that there's a disconnect between how you're approaching the valuation of this property and how the city approaches the valuation of all types of these properties?
Well, just because the city values them the way they do, doesn't mean it's right.
Okay, but so from our end at the city though, we're trying to remain consistent for doing all these type of properties in the city, not just say an individual one. So from our end, when we're presenting a market data, that's how we can represent the most efficient way of saying where we fall in line with our model. But I digress off that. Just one more question when we go to page 2 of your brief. It says here, these numbers that you're using, it says at the top 2020 assessment roll, market value is April 1st, 2018. Did you use that? Because I can see the expense allowance here is different than, and the cap rate here is different than what we're presenting in my brief for the 2023 assessment roll.
Oh, good call. I have the wrong limit here. Did I use the wrong? Let me just look at your brief. That could be an error.
Because we have the expense ratio at 42%, not 38 point.
Okay. Yeah, no, just hold on there. You are correct. I used the wrong. I never even noticed that. So give me 1 sec, and I will correct that because I got my sheet open right now. Hang in there with me. I apologize for that, Mr. Chairman. I didn't even notice that. Okay, so I'm going to basically if I use your number, the gross potential rent that is in your brief on page 3 of $784,703, I use your vacancy at 3.2%. That's $25,110. So the effective gross income is $759,593. Expenses at 42%, and the cap rate. Using the cap rate I've used of 8.25%, I'm getting a market value of $5,340,165. Slight difference. So again, that's using your numbers, 784, 703 for the potential income, your vacancy, expenses at an 8.25% cap rate, and the new value is now $5,340,000.
And just again, regarding the caps from CBRE, one more quick point to touch on. Do you know what they use to come up with those numbers at all? Like just from a sales perspective, or how they're making any adjustments to that?
From the research I've done, it's that they basically do sales across Canada, and then they specifically tailor them for each market.
And so would they be using the property's actual income though, or would they be using just a market income based on CMHC data?
That I don't know.
Okay. All right, no further questions.
Thank you.
Well, I'll answer this point that they don't use CMHC data because they don't consider those as being comparable.
Okay.
Thank you. Ms. Brunson?
So, Mr. Rack, similar questions as last time, but maybe putting aside these not-for-profit housing properties, what is the typical expense rate in your experience that you would apply to a residential building like this?
So a residential building?
Like a regular apartment building, what's the expense rate you would typically suggest using?
Well, they vary depending on the age.
Okay, so for
I mean, for the age, I have some apartments that were built in the 20s, and they have expense rates is up to almost 60%, 61%.
Okay, so here the expense rate, if I'm understanding, is just reflective of the year that the building was built, and you don't take into account the other services that you're referring to as expenses, correct?
Say that again, please.
Well, what I'm struggling with here is that we have a very low expense rate of 38.96%, but we've heard extensive argument from you that the expense rate is much higher. So I struggle to understand why you don't just include the actual expense rate in your calculation here.
Because there's different things you can adjust to come up to a value. So I'm using all the city's values and adjusting the cap rate. So I don't want to adjust a whole bunch of things. So if I did pull the expenses up a lot higher, then I'd probably use a little lower cap rate. But the cap rate is going to take all that into consideration.
Would we get a more accurate picture if we just used the actual expense rate?
Well, if I used all the actuals, I'd probably be looking for $1 million on the property.
Okay, I understand. All right, thank you. That explains it. No further questions.
And I'll just kind of expand on that. That's typically the scenarios for these types of properties. Every property has to pay some taxes. The question is, what is a reasonable amount to be paid on a valuation? So I think like it's $5,243,000. That's actually higher than what the property generates, but the property's got to have some value to it. So that's why I'm using the city's parameters and income of that and just adjusting the cap rate.
That makes sense to me. Thank you very much.
I thank you. Mr. Dengel?
I have no further questions.
I just have just an observation. Mr. Rack, we're talking about cap rates here, and I guess you're at 8.25, and the city's at 4.35. Obviously, you're at 5 million, they're at 10 million. So did you ever think about maybe looking at a cost approach for the subject or not?
No, because all these properties basically sell on the income approach. Cost approach, you'd have to, first of all, the cost approach information that's out there is so old, and when you're factoring it up by years, I know this from working at the department, is that if you're costing something out and you went over every brick and every nail and every sink and everything, it would take forever. And at the end of the day, then you have to depreciate it. And in these buildings, the cost is actually more than what it's worth. If you're looking at the income approach, it probably cost them, let's say for example, it cost them $8 million to build the building. Well, based on the income, it's not worth $8 million. As I've said before, nobody is going to buy this property for the income. Nobody is. That's why once they're developed, and they're usually always developed by some kind of grant from the government. If the government didn't give them a grant to put it up, it would never be built. The government is basically subsidizing it so that we can help old people that can't afford to live in regular apartments. That's the whole process of doing that and giving them assisted living, because the government has stepped out of that. The government doesn't have any more buildings for people. They've washed their hands of that whole process. I know the last building I sold was just off William, and it was a shambles. So they're relying on basically nonprofits to put these places together. So using a cost approach it doesn't work.
All right. I thank you. Either party want summation?
I'll just reserve the summation at the end because it'll kind of apply to these last 5 properties that we've done.
Mr. Rack, same thing?
I'll do the same thing.
All right. Let's go to the 190. Sinowick Bay. Mr. Assessor, whenever you're ready.
We're doing 100 Sinowac next, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so we have file number 223756 and roll number 07569134175. Roll year 2023. Assessed value $4,026,000. Classification is 40, and liability is school tax exempt. So we have it is a 1 building, 3-story, actual year built, effective year built. So this is a little older than the previous ones, 1984, and then 42 suites, and then 11 outdoor parking stalls. The location in the similar complex as what we had we previously been discussing on the prior 2. So if we scroll to page 4, we have our income value summary again. So 38 1-bedroom, 4 2-bedroom. We have this one. The average monthly rent is $787.67 per unit. Our effective gross income, $384,282. Our expense ratio in this one, 49.19%, to get a net operating income of $195,254, and the cap rate being 4.85%. And then the next page, I had just provided again some rental comparables for the property. Of other ones in the area. And then, so going forward again, similar type of situation as the prior 2 with the CMHC market comparison. So you have the first one on page 7 at the top showing the zone 5 average. And then the second one on the bottom showing the year of construction table average being 1984. So when we get to page 8 with our zone and year average works out to $1,033.95. Their yearly rent potential $521,112. Our models coming in at $396,986. So we're 24% below market rents on this property. And then just scrolling on regarding the capitalization rates, again, similar as previous. And then page 13 to just give you a little excerpt of the property. Operates as a seniors apartment building comprised of 42 units consisting of the 38 1-bedroom and 4 2-bedroom units, and then it just shows what their monthly rent schedule is and the waiting list, etc. So that would conclude the presentation for this one.
Thank you, Mr. Rack.
Yes, can you look at your page 3?
Yeah.
On your page 3, I mean, the building was built in 1985, and in 2013, there's a sale on the property, $504,000. And today, the building is worth over $4 million in 9 years. Would you not think that that's an indication of how low these properties sell for?
Well, we can't confirm. we can't confirm. Like I can't confirm to you right this second on what was the considerations of that sale. Like, so was it associated? Was it a type of a title transfer between associated parties? So I can't even begin to look at that right now.
Okay, that's my only question. Plus, I would ask the same questions about CMHC, et cetera,
Right.
the rents. So I've gone through all that already.
Yeah.
Thank you. Faye, question?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Danielle?
No questions at all. Thank you.
Yeah, I have none. Mr. Rack, your presentation?
Okay, take a looking at page 1. You'll see the building to the left that's attached to it is actually the dining hall that you can walk through. Those 2 units there into the dining hall. So they serve, they're connected in that regards. So this is, again, nonprofit. It rents to seniors 55 and older. You go to page 2, that's the basically information the assessor provided. Page 3 is the income expense mailer. Page 4 shows what the total rent is per year if it's fully occupied. So there's presently 42 units with only 11 parking stalls. So if you went to private, you'd need to have more parking stalls. So 2 methods of evaluation. So basically, based on the actual income expenses, the income and expense mailer, I reduced the expenses from $302,677 to $239,265. So here you're getting the operating expenses, which all look pretty good. There's nothing that stands out that's out of sync that's too high. So the management that was actually reduced to $18,000, or the management would be $18,250, but that amount is actually included in wages and benefits at the bottom at $25,000. So they put the management fee there. So the actual expenses are 67.5%. So you go to page 6. If we did evaluation based on the actual rent, expenses, and department's cap rate, so that's the actual income, 365,016, and the actual expenses at 67.5%, you get a value of $2,367,712. So basically, the rents are determined by the tenancy branches. So when it was first built, the rents were set, and they're only allowed to increase per the amount the tenancy branches allows. There's insufficient parking, so private owner would have to add more parking. So actual market data from actual sales has been compiled by CBRE, Cushman Wakefield, to determine cap rates for senior housing. They are the experts. So the assessor's cap rate is 4.85%. So you're looking at basically low-rise housing is from Cushman Wakefield is 5 to 5.7%. So even at their low end, it's higher than the assessor's cap rate. CBRE low-rise, 5, and that's a low-rise A. I would consider this a B, so it's 5.25 to 5.75. And then you have Colliers, low-rise 5 to 6. So the independent market reports don't supply evidence to support the cap rate the department is using. So the average cap rate is around 6%. Then we go down into the cap rates for nonprofit housing, which I've gone through before, and independent living with an A building, cap rates range from 6.25 to 7. And we know why, because of expenses. So the average cap rate is 6.5% for those types of housing, for seniors housing, nonprofit. And if you're looking at an average cap rate around 6% on the high end for regular apartments, I'm suggesting that a 6.5% cap rate would be sufficient on this type of property. So I'm using the actual rents on the last page from the department, and I'm using the low-rise cap rate average from Cushman Wakefield and CBRE and and Collier's at the high end at 6% on regular housing. So 6.5%, the gross income from the department's vacancy, the department's expenses, and a cap rate of 6.5%. So I'm looking at $3,003,906, or you'd say $3,004,000. That's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Reck. Mr. McCulloch.
Just, you know what, a lot of these same questions that we've been discussing on the prior properties would essentially carry over here. So I don't think I need to rehash it again.
Ms. Branson.
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Tangel.
No questions at all at this point.
We have none. So we'll press on to number 135. Mr. McCulloch, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so we have.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chairman. Can we take a 5-minute break, please?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right,
Okay,
sounds
we'll
good.
be back in 5 minutes.
Take 5. All right, we'll call the hearing back to order. We're at 135 Sinowik Bay. Mr. McCulloch, whenever you're ready, you can take us through this property.
Okay. So we have file number 223757, roll number 075-690-30600. Roll year 2023, assessed value 7,501,000, classification 40, and liability is S. So there's they're school tax exempt, and so it's a 1 building, 4 stories, built in 2005, 51 suites, 39 outdoor parking. Similar location as the previous other properties on Sinowik that we were discussing. So scrolling to page 4, we have 24 1-bed, 27 2-bed to make up the 51. Average monthly rent per unit on this one, we're coming at $1,081.57. You could see the workup that we have here for effective gross income 640, 740, expense ratio 47.32%, the net operating income at 337,542, with the cap rate of 4.5%. Scrolling on to page 5, we have the other comparables that I've just wanted to highlight here, where you could see that it falls in range with other similar properties in the area. And then again, our CMHC market approach using the Zone 5 again, and the construction class being 2005 plus. We get to a total number of 782,370, and our model potential rent is 661,921. So we're coming in around 15% below market. And again, scrolling on the cap rate to page 12, again, just included the descriptor there of the property from their website. So opened in 2005, consists of 27 units, which are 2-bedroom, and 24, which are 1-bedroom. And it just gives you the schedule here, the rent schedule and the waiting list, etc. So that would conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reck.
No questions, Mr. Chairman. They'd just be the same. We've covered them.
Panel members,
Likewise, no questions, Mr. Chair.
I have no questions either.
I have none. Mr. Rack, your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So page 1, you'll see a picture of the unit we're talking about, apartment we're talking about. And it's for seniors 55 years of age and over. Excuse me. If you look at the bottom of page 1, there was a grant that still applies to never applied to 2 bedrooms and applied to the 1 bedrooms. They still receive a grant of $89,542. If the building was purchased by a private individual, the grant would be gone for private housing. A potential purchaser would have to buy the property with existing leases in place. Excuse me. So the building only has, on page 2, the building only has 39 parking stalls for 51 suites. An additional 12 would have to be added. There's no room for that if it turned into private housing. On the bottom of page 2, you'll see the assessors using a 4.5% cap rate. Model generated. So if you look below in the bottom here, you'll see on page 3, the cap rates for Cushman, Wakefield, CBRE, and Colliers have an average of low rise of 4.5%. Or the assessors using 4.5%, and the low rise average is 5.16 to 5.91. So their low end average is basically higher, quite a lot higher than the city's cap rate, which I think is too low. So if you go to page 5, see the total gross income is $545,748. So if it was basically a private apartment, you'd have to, at the bottom of page 5, remove the $80,542. So the gross income that they received less, or that grant would now make it at $476,512 with an NOI of $69,236. Page 6, if you take the actual income and expenses and you come up with a basic gross income less expenses, you're coming with an actual potential income of $545,748. If you use the assessor's vacancy and expenses and use a cap rate, which is basically at 6%, the low end or the high end of regular apartments, you're getting a value of $4,719,000. That's from the regular markets. You'd have to use a higher end cap rate because of the lower rents and the higher expenses. Then I've gone to the senior housing, so I've talked about all that. So if you're looking at the Cushman Wakefield CBRE, you're looking at a seniors housing independent average of 6.25 to 6.87. So coming up with a value using a 6.25% cap rate and the city's potential income, vacancy, and expenses, I'm getting a value of $5,401,000. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Mr. McCulloch, questions of Mr. Rack?
You're mute.
No more questions. Thank you.
Ms. Branson?
Likewise, no questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And I have no questions.
Dengel? Mr. Dengel?
I have no questions.
I have none either. We'll press on to the last one, number 155, Siddlewick Bay. So, Mr. Assessor, whenever you're ready.
Yes, so we have file number 223758, roll number 075-690-30500. Roll years 2023, assessed value $7,627,000, classification 40, liability school tax exempt. We have a 1 building, 4 stories, built in 2007. Again, 51 suites, 39 outdoor parking, similar location, same complex as the prior 4. And then if we scroll to page 4, we're coming in with an average monthly rent per unit at $1,085.64. Gross potential rent $664,412. Effective gross income after the vacancies $643,151. Expense ratio 47.23%, and a net operating income of $339,391, and a capitalization rate of 4.45%. And then if you go to page 5, you'll see the rent comparisons again, just similar rent comparables as the last property, where you could see it falls in line with similar properties in the area. And again, the workup of the averages. So using the Zone 5 CMHC, using the year of construction being 2005 and above, we would get to the yearly rent potential of $782,370 and a model potential rent of $664,412. So coming in roughly again 15% below market rents on this one. And again, like I touched on prior, all these properties that we've done on Sinawac, we've applied below average income quality on them to reflect that the nature of use that they are. Scrolling through the capitalization rate, again, we touched on that. Our sales to support the cap rate. Page 11, just another write-up of what this building consists of from the actual website. So that would conclude the presentation.
Thank you. Mr. Reck, questions of the assessor?
I have no questions.
Panel members?
No questions.
I have no questions either.
I have none either. So Mr. Reck, your presentation, sir.
Sure. Look at page 1 and you can see a picture of the complex, the apartment. So you'll see at the bottom of page 1, the assessor again is using a low cap rate of 4.45%, which is, if you're looking at page 2, as I've gone in before, you got the low end is at 5.8%, 0.08%, and the high end is basically 5.83%. So the assessor is using a considerably lower cap rate than the market reports indicate. So they don't really. So those market reports don't support the assessor's evidence on what a cap rate should be for the property. So if you go to page 3, I've gone through all the senior housing, assisted living housing. So we're looking at page 4. We got the average cap rate, low end is 6.25 for seniors, the high end is 6.87. So applying the department's parameters for the gross rent, vacancy, and expenses. So you got private apartment cap rates from 5.08 to 5.83, seniors 6.25 to 6.87. So I'm going to apply the low end cap rate for seniors housing at 6.25. So using the assessor's gross income and the expenses vacancy with a 6.25 cap rate, you get $5,267,000. So you're looking at page 5. So you've got the gross income of $619,356. Page 6 shows the expenses. If you subtract that from the expenses, you're getting $619. And using a high-end cap rate for private housing, you're getting $6,353,000. And I'm asking the board to reduce it. Yeah, so even using the high end of actual apartments for profit at 5.83%, I'm getting a value of $5,635,000. That's my presentation.
No questions.
Thank you.
No questions.
Panel members, Mr. Denjo?
I have no questions either.
Okay, I have none either. Justin, I think that finishes that part of your presentation. And Mr. Rack, that concludes everything. Thank you for your attendance, Mr. Rack, and results very soon. So have a good day. And you want summary?
Yeah, just the summation I had said regarding these last 5 properties that we had spoken about.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. So a lot of the main issue with this would be the capitalization rate. And I just want to reiterate that we have provided sales evidence of cap rates when we are doing our market valuations that do support the range where our cap rates do fall in. And we do apply, again, a below average income quality on these properties to reflect the nature of use that they are in right now. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for everyone.
Right, I thank you. Mr. Rack, final word, summation, if you like.
Sure, I'll just say something about those cap rates. As we've gone through these properties, we've gotten cap rates from the assessor department generated, as even the last one we're at right now, 4.45%. And they state that basically those cap rates are supported by the market reports from Cushman & Wakefield, CBRE, and Colliers, in which they contradict those cap rates. I mean, at this particular property, it's 4.45%. Well, in the low end, you're getting 5%, 5.5%, and 5% from Colliers. So, and then we had another property that was actually below the 20th percentile. So I don't think that the cap rates are reasonable, and you can't use cap rates from private profit buildings, which are, you can't compare them to these types of buildings. So I would say that their cap rates are on the low end, and they do have information available to them from these 3 companies on what seniors housing cap rates are all about. And I think the cap rates I presented are more appropriate for these types of properties. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rack. Thank you for your presentations, and results in the mail very soon. So thank you, and have a pleasant day. Mr.
Thank you all for taking the time.
Okay,
Sorry,
Mr.
thank you all for taking the time to hearing my presentations. And you guys also have a great day.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McCulloch, thank you very kindly with your presentation, and we have heard all the items scheduled, and the hearing is now adjourned.
All right, thank you. Have a good day.
Have a good day.